I was heading home after another one of those long shifts, my feet heavy, as if glued to the asphalt. The sky was already darkening, and the street's yellow light flickered, almost as if trying to give me a final warning about what was to come. The office, Etherforge AI, was a silent battleground where I fought against endless hours of code and systems that seemed to never stop demanding from me. I was a senior AI machine learning engineer at a tech startup, considered one of the best on the team. But this acclaim brought me no comfort. On the contrary, it isolated me even more. My East Austin loft was a reflection of my methodical, solitary routine. Opening the door, the scent of coffee and the echo of silence greeted me. The lights were off, and the only thing illuminating the space was the glow of my computer screen, a beacon amidst the darkness. Every corner of the place exhaled solitude, and I felt like a mere spectator of my own life. The walls were empty, much like my soul, filled only by the echo of my own voice, murmuring about projects and deadlines. As I headed to the kitchen, a weight settled in my chest. It was a strange feeling, as if something in the air portended changes. The distant rumble of thunder began to resonate, and the Texas storm approached, bringing with it a mix of anxiety and expectation. Something inside me whispered that the night would bring unexpected alterations. I didn't know what, but there was a palpable energy enveloping me. I prepared some tea, my hands trembling slightly as the kettle began to whistle. Steam rose, and with it came reflections on my life. What was I doing? I was immersed in work that seemed endless, and my personal life amounted to a few superficial conversations with colleagues. I remembered past relationships, scarred by insecurity and disillusionment, and a growing fear of never being enough for anyone. It was then that I heard the knock at the door, and my heart raced. My first reaction was one of strangeness. Who could it be at this hour? Opening it, I saw Chloe Miller. She was soaked, her hair plastered to her skin, and her gaze expressed desperation. The world outside seemed to have transformed into a true deluge, and all I could think of was how fragile she appeared in that moment. "May I stay here?" she asked, her voice trembling. Her eyes sought shelter, and I, even in my own solitude, couldn't deny her. It was a mix of protection and an urge to care for her, but at the same time, a growing fear of getting involved in something that could further complicate my life. "Of course, come in," I replied, trying to maintain formality, but the tension between us was palpable. With each step she took inside my apartment, I felt as if the solitude that had always accompanied me was being challenged. As I made tea for us both, the room filled with an odd energy. I was caught in thoughts of Chloe being there, and how her presence already changed my home's feel. Scattered conversations began, but a fragility hung in the air. Each word felt like an attempt to fill the void around us. "Sorry for the mess," I muttered, looking around the loft. Chloe just gave a timid smile, but the silence weighed like an upcoming storm. It was a mix of discomfort and curiosity, and I knew that night somehow would change everything. As the storm roared outside, the room grew confidential. Chloe and I sat facing each other, our gazes meeting in quiet moments. The tea was warm, but the room's temperature seemed to shift as tension grew palpable. Something in her gaze intrigued me, a blend of fragility and strength I couldn't quite grasp. The rain outside made everything beyond these walls distant, and the solitude I knew began to fade like vapor in the mist. Chloe had always been just my friend's sister. I remembered seeing her first at some party. She was laughing, her long hair loose, absolutely radiant. But now before me, the bright young woman I admired seemed to carry an unseen burden. Family pressure suffocated her, and I wondered if she felt as alone as I did. "Do you remember when we first met?" I asked, trying to break the ice. She smiled, but the sadness in her eyes was clear. "Yes, I think so. You were talking about a new technology you'd made," she replied, fingers nervously playing with the cup. Always so serious, Ethan. I chuckled. Always reinventing myself, right? On the outside, everything looks controlled. And on the inside? She asked, eyes fixed on mine, as if she knew what chaos lay behind my professional front. A heavy silence filled the air, and I felt exposed. Inside, there's chaos. Sometimes, it's hard to believe I'm good enough for what I do. It's like I'm always running, but the finish line never comes. She nodded, understanding, and for a moment, our souls seemed to connect. The feeling of vulnerability was strange, yet freeing. The talk flowed naturally, and as we spoke, I realized Chloe also carried her own shadows. My parents are always fighting, she said, her voice hushed. It's like I'm caught in a war between them. Sometimes I feel responsible for their happiness, and it's exhausting. Her confession left me in a quiet shock. Chloe, the young woman everyone perceived as resilient, was battling unseen demons. I can't imagine how difficult that must be, I murmured. No one should have to bear that burden alone. She averted her gaze, and I realized I had touched upon something profound. That's the core of it, she said, her voice a near whisper. I believe vulnerability is a burden. Showing weakness makes me feel like a weight on others. Sometimes we need to allow ourselves to be weak, I replied, the sincerity in my tone drawing her eyes back to mine. That's how we truly connect. Chloe seemed to ponder my words. I could discern the internal struggle unfolding within her gaze. I just want to be strong, Ethan. I don't want to be a burden to anyone. In that moment, I perceived an invisible shield of protection between us, a fine line coalescing around our vulnerabilities. Yet, as our conversation wove on, this barrier began to recede. I saw her grappling with the urge not to fully open up, while simultaneously yearning for a safe space to simply be herself. The nascent connection we were forging felt palpable, and at once terrifying. Do you feel alone, Chloe? I couldn't trace the origin of the courage to ask such a question, yet the words hung in the air, irrevocable. Yes, she replied, her eyes welling with unshed tears. And you? The answer hovered on the tip of my tongue, but I hesitated. The truth was, I felt profoundly alone too, yet I recoiled from appearing fragile before her. It's difficult to admit, but yes, sometimes all I have is my work. She offered a melancholic smile, and abruptly the room felt warmer, more encompassing. I want to believe there's something more, something better than this, she said, her gaze now more ardent. What if we tried to discover that together? The phrase slipped from my lips, and I wondered if I had ventured too far. But Chloe's expression held no rejection. It was a silent invitation for vulnerability to become a haven, not a burden. I think that would be good, she murmured. The weight of the silence was cleaved by a peal of thunder that reverberated outside, and for a fleeting instant, everything seemed profoundly clear. We were together, within a space that felt both secure and daunting, and the storm beyond merely mirrored the internal battle we each waged. The emotional connection coalescing between us felt intense, and the stark reality of our lives began to interweave in ways I had never conceived possible. And so it was, amidst sincere conversations and the raw unveiling of fears, that I recognized something within Chloe that pulled at me. Something that transcended the public persona she'd always worn as my friend's cherished sister. She was a fractured soul, yet the inherent beauty of her fragility was, to me, irresistible. In that moment, the nascent idea that vulnerability could forge an emotional haven between two people began to solidify in the quiet chambers of my mind. If I could unbar my own guarded self to her, perhaps we could chart a path together, away from the storms that raged around us, both real and internal. The storm outside intensified, rain lashing against the windows like a relentless drum, crafting a rhythm that seemed to echo the beat of our intertwined hearts. The connection, carefully woven between Chloe and me through those hours of intimate conversation, grew increasingly palpable, as though the external world had simply dissolved. The gnawing fear of vulnerability, once a formidable barrier, began to recede, yielding to a burgeoning curiosity about the uncharted territory that lay ahead. "Are you comfortable here?" I asked, the words a fragile attempt to disrupt the quietude that had settled after our confessions. She nodded, yet I caught the subtle hesitation flickering within her eyes. Chloe was a mosaic of quiet strength and profound fragility, a paradox that endlessly captivated me. "It's all so new," she replied, her gaze fixed on the steaming mug of tea she held. "I'm not accustomed to laying myself bare like this, especially to someone I've only ever known as my friend's sister. And I'm not accustomed to opening myself to anyone," I confessed, a fragile sense of security blooming within me. "But you make me want to." She met my gaze, an intricate blend of surprise and gratitude etched upon her face. "That's good, Ethan. I feel like in some profound way we're breaking down walls." The emotional tension between us was a living thing, taut like a finely stretched wire, poised to snap. Chloe leaned a fraction closer, and I felt my heart quicken its frantic pace. It was alarmingly easy to lose myself in the depths of her eyes, yet simultaneously an undercurrent of uncertainty permeated the air. "Do you feel vulnerable when you're near me?" I asked, the urge to confront the subject head-on proving irresistible. "I certainly do." "Yes," she responded slowly, the unwavering intensity of her gaze causing a tremor of hesitation within me. "But it's also liberating. I never imagined I could open myself up to someone in this way. Sometimes vulnerability can serve as a sanctuary. It is often safer to expose our fears than to perpetually conceal them," I observed, feeling the emotional temperature in our intimate space subtly rise. Chloe leaned in further, the physical chasm between us seemingly diminishing to nothing. A potent electricity hummed in the air, intensifying every sensation. "Have you ever envisioned a different life for yourself, one far removed from the expectations of others?" I probed, steering the conversation towards a more somber, introspective path. "Sometimes I dream of little else. Yes, I dream of being truly free, of living unbound by the constraints my family has subtly imposed. I don't want to be solely responsible for their happiness," she articulated, the shadow of sorrow in her eyes deepening perceptibly. "You shouldn't have to carry that weight alone," I murmured, and with those words, the burgeoning connection between us deepened, settling like a quiet anchor. "What if we risked it then?" Chloe suggested, a determined glint in her eyes. "What if we truly attempted to live without these binding restraints?" The profound idea was alluring, yet simultaneously terrifying. "What if everything simply crumbled?" I asked, a fragile uncertainty deeply reflecting in my quiet voice. "And what if everything instead became incredibly more beautiful?" She leaned even closer, her warm presence a compelling silent invitation. "Sometimes you simply have to take that profound risk, Ethan. What's truly, irrevocably at stake is our happiness." The delicate moment stretched, and I profoundly sensed we were at a pivotal emotional crossroads, a point of no return. Looking into her deep, searching eyes, I discerned a complex, poignant mix of palpable fear and burgeoning, resolute hope. It was as if we were tacitly offering each other a quiet, vital shelter, a vulnerable, silent promise that we could become so much more than we had ever allowed ourselves to be until this very fragile instant. "Are you truly ready to consciously take this momentous step?" I asked, The deep question, a vulnerable whisper, barely audible against the tumultuous beat of my own hopeful heart. "I genuinely don't know," she replied, her words carrying a delicate tremor, yet a fierce, defiant sparkle in her deep, searching eyes seemed to powerfully contradict her spoken apprehension. "But I profoundly feel that, with you standing beside me, I can genuinely, courageously try to face the unknown." I tried to consciously recall all the formidable, intricately constructed barriers I had painstakingly built over a lifetime of guarded solitude, and how this singular electrifying night was now compelling me to desperately yearn to irrevocably shatter every single one of them. What had begun as a deceptively simple, mundane conversation had subtly yet profoundly transformed into an insistent, daunting, and undeniably alluring invitation to a completely new, uncharted reality. The deep, aching desire to draw infinitely closer to her was a powerful, undeniable current, and the desperate, persistent need for emotional comfort pulsed insistently, almost physically, between us. Chloe moved closer, the space that was once a barrier, now a potent invitation. The tension, a fragile current of shared vulnerabilities, culminated in the moment our lips met. Hesitant at first, a delicate exploration, it then deepened with an intensity that seemed to breathe vibrant life into all the quiet insecurities we had just laid bare between us. The kiss was gentle yet pregnant with unspoken promises. It was an emotional discovery, a profound unveiling of soul, not merely a physical act. In that instant, it felt as though we had found a mutual shelter deep within each other's hearts, a quiet sanctuary from the world's ceaseless demands. The actual storm raging outside, its relentless drumming against the window panes, became utterly insignificant, overshadowed by the tempest of burgeoning emotions now swirling within us. And there, in the hushed confines of my East Austin loft, with the rain still lashing at the glass, I realized with a sudden, profound clarity that we were both irrevocably prepared to face the unknown together. The tempest continued its relentless roar beyond my walls, but within the quiet confines of my apartment, a new, tentative sensation of warmth and solace began to bloom, weaving itself into the very fabric of the air. The kiss had been a crucial turning point, an unspoken pact, a singular moment where we had finally, irrevocably shed the carefully constructed barriers that had long encircled us. I felt, with a profound and unsettling certainty, that we were poised on the threshold of uncharted territory, a sacred space where vulnerability would no longer be a crushing burden, but rather a profoundly safe and cherished haven. Chloe pulled back gently, our gazes still intimately entwined. I saw the deep insecurity shadowing her face yield to something lighter, a fragile mix of hope and cautious expectation. "That was different," she murmured, a shy smile forming on her lips, a quiet bloom in the wake of the storm. "Different and necessary," I replied, a profound sincerity in my voice. The touch of our lips still resonated, and I knew this was a new chapter. "I never thought I could open up like this. It's as if you've shattered a barrier I never knew existed." "It is strange, isn't it?" Chloe mused, watching rain streaking the windows. "When you allow vulnerability, things begin to shift. I feel, for some reason, more willing to open to you than I ever have with anyone." The storm outside raged, yet, oddly, it felt distant. Within us, a new tempest brewed, one of emotions and possibilities, not fear. "Perhaps it's because we both understand feeling trapped," I said, seeking her hands, intertwining our fingers. "Perhaps we're ready to face this together." Chloe inhaled deeply. I saw determination spark in her gaze. "I want to share more, but you must promise not to judge." The vulnerability in her voice was palpable, stirring a profound wave of empathy within me. "I promise," I responded, my voice earnest. "Here, you can truly be yourself." She hesitated, weighing her words. My childhood was complicated. My parents were always fighting, and I always felt compelled to be the peacemaker. When they weren't at war, I was responsible for their happiness, but it left me utterly drained. I can't recall the last time I truly considered myself. I listened intently, sensing the deep pain she carried. That must have been incredibly difficult, I said, discerning the depth of her struggle. No one should have to carry such a burden so young. And you? Chloe asked, her voice soft. How do you feel about your life? I hesitated, but our building connection gave me courage. I feel trapped too. Work consumes everything. I focus so much on my career that I sometimes forget what it's like to have people around. What you said resonated profoundly. The constant need to be strong, when truly I just want to be myself. She nodded, and the silence was comfortable. The world outside ceased to exist. What formed between us was a web of mutual understanding, a space to share our weaknesses without judgment. You don't have to be strong all the time, Ethan, Chloe said, her voice a mere whisper. Sometimes letting vulnerability in is the bravest thing we can do. With those words, I pulled her closer, and this time I didn't hesitate. Our lips met again, and the kiss was more intense, deeper. It wasn't just a touch. It was an exchange of everything we had hidden until then. There was a feeling of liberation, and the walls that had once isolated us seemed to be crumbling. After the kiss, I looked into her eyes and said, I feel like we're allowing ourselves to be who we truly are. I never expected this to happen, but I'm so glad you're here. Chloe smiled, and the light that emanated from her was infectious. Me too. I never thought I'd find someone who understood how I feel. The conversation flowed naturally, as if we were discussing everything and nothing all at once. She spoke of her dreams of one day becoming a psychologist, of helping others face their own emotional battles. I shared my plans to explore new areas at Etherforge AI, to not let myself be confined by the expectations I had placed upon myself. But as the night deepened, reality began to remind us that this connection was novel and fragile. And now? I asked, a tremor in my voice. What do we do with this? She pondered for a moment, and the luster in her eyes began to dim slightly. I don't know. I want to explore this, but what if others find out? The fear of being judged, of having to confront rejection, hung over us like a looming cloud. I'm scared too, I confessed, but I feel what we have is strong enough to face it. Chloe took a deep breath, and the tension between us intensified once more. Do you think I'm strong enough for this? Yes, I do, I replied, resolute. And I want to try too. The uncertainty still lingered, yet I knew that together we would possess the fortitude required to confront whatever lay ahead. We resolved that we would take a step forward, navigate this new phase together, even if it meant risking a measure of our established security. As the storm outside finally began to recede, we both stood ready to confront the new reality that awaited us. And as we gazed at each other, we knew that true strength lay not in the absence of fear, but in the courage of our shared vulnerability. The days following that enchanted night were replete with fresh revelations and potent emotions. The storm had dissipated, yet within me a nascent struggle began to coalesce. The warmth of that bond with Chloe still smoldered, but the starkness of daily life steadily reminded us of the barriers that remained. My relationship deepened quickly. We spent hours exchanging messages daily and meeting at night. Breakfasts, once solitary, now held shared laughter and knowing glances. Our conversations, once superficial, grew deeper, and I felt I was finally knowing Chloe beyond my friend's sister. However, as our connection strengthened, fear began to settle. What would happen if our friends, or worse, our families, discovered us? This concern started to affect my mind, and I found myself hesitating to be completely open about what we were living. Each message we exchanged seemed to carry an added weight. What was once light now became an emotional minefield. One morning, entering the Etherforge AI office, I realized the growing tension was hindering my productivity. A close friend, Marcus, also Chloe's friend, called me over. "Ethan, is everything all right? You seem a bit off lately," he said, leaning on my desk. "Just tired, I guess. Too much work." I tried to smile, but Marcus wasn't convinced. His gaze made it clear he sensed something deeper. "You know you can count on me, right? If there's anything more, I'm here," he said, and the words weighed on my heart. The worry for our valued friendship was becoming a dilemma. I didn't want to disappoint him, but I wouldn't give up what was blooming between Chloe and me. That same week, we found a small cafe, far from our usual circle, to meet. The quiet corner cafe was cozy, with soft light and an intimate air that let us talk without interruption. When Chloe arrived, her smile brightened my day, but concern also showed on her face. "Hey, how are you?" I asked, noticing the hesitation in her voice. "Hi, Ethan," she replied, her words slow to emerge. "I've been thinking a lot about us." Those words put me on edge. "About us?" "Yes, about what we're doing. I don't want this to become something we hide, but I also don't know how to handle it. What if people find out?" I knew I had to be honest. "I'm worried too. What we have feels special, but the weight of judgment frightens me. Still, I don't want it to keep us from happiness." She took a deep breath, and I saw the struggle in her eyes. "I want this to work, but I'm not sure if we're ready for what's ahead. What do you think we should do?" I looked at her, pondering how the very vulnerability that had once bound us could now tear us apart. We need to be true to each other, which means facing our insecurities. If we decide to move forward, we must be certain we're willing to embrace the consequences. Chloe nodded slowly, a flicker of resolve hardening her expression. "You're right. I want this to work. But what if our friends start asking?" "Oh, then we'll have to be candid," I said, a nascent certainty blossoming within me. "If they're truly our friends, they'll understand. If they don't, perhaps that's their issue, not ours. What truly matters is what we feel." In the days that followed, we continued to meet, our moments together intense and profoundly significant. What had once been an unpretentious friendship now transformed into a deep connection that defied every norm we knew. Yet the persistent tension concerning discovery still hovered over us like a persistent shadow, a constant chilling reminder of the situation's fragility. One evening, as we watched a film in my East Austin loft, Chloe shattered the hushed quiet. "Have you ever thought about what it will be like when someone finds out?" Her voice was soft, yet an undeniable weight resided in the words. The question caught me off guard, and I hesitated. "I have thought about it, and it's terrifying. But it could also be an opportunity. We could show them that what we have is real, and it's something good." She looked at me, her expression mirroring both trepidation and fragile hope. "Let's meet with our friends this coming Saturday," Chloe suggested, the sheer audacity of the idea making my heart lurch. "Whatever unfolds, we will face it together." The appointed day arrived, and as I walked into the lively taproom on SoCo, a tumultuous battle between anxiety and unfamiliar excitement raged within me. The vibrant space thrummed with laughter and music, and when Chloe finally appeared, her smile seemed a shade more nervous than usual. The moment we joined our circle of friends, I instinctively sensed they had already begun to perceive the subtle shift in our unspoken dynamic. "Hey, Ethan, you've been looking happier lately. What's been going on?" Marcus inquired, and the palpable tension in the air instantly thickened. Chloe looked at me, and I knew that was the moment. "Well, actually, we're together," I said, my voice steady. "We're dating." The ensuing silence was deafening. Glances met, and I could see the surprise on our friends' faces. Chloe squeezed my hand, and the strength of the gesture was a stark reminder that we were in this together. "That's incredible," one of our friends finally exclaimed. "Congratulations, you two are a perfect match." The atmosphere began to warm, and other friends started asking questions. The tension started to dissipate, giving way to unexpected support. But when I looked at Marcus, I noticed his gaze was more critical. He seemed to be trying to process the information. "Is this serious, then?" he asked, the doubt clear in his tone. "Yes, it is serious," Chloe replied, with a confidence I hadn't known she possessed. "We are trying to find happiness together, and I hope you can support that." Chloe's words brought a new level of sincerity to the air that enveloped us. The rest of the evening flowed with laughter and animated conversations, and as our friends voiced their support, I felt the weight lifting from my shoulders. As the laughter and conversations filled the air, I realized that regardless of what came next, we were ready to face this new phase. What began as an emotional sanctuary had transformed into a journey of discovery and courage. And as the night unfolded, I knew the love and hope we shared was stronger than any challenge we might encounter. From then on, I was ready to face the world with Chloe by my side, knowing that together we could overcome any obstacle that arose. The future was uncertain, but with her, I felt we could transform any storm into a rainbow of possibilities. Following the revelation of our relationship, the atmosphere within the group of friends began to shift. The support we received was an unexpected relief, yet it also brought forth a new dynamic. Chloe and I were closer, but there was a pervasive sense that we were now being observed not solely by our friends, but by ourselves as well. What had once been a secure space became an emotional battlefield, where every glance and every word carried a profound weight. In the days that followed, the routine continued, but the pressure of this newness lingered over us like a persistent cloud. I tried to focus on work, but the uncertainty of how our relationship would be perceived affected my concentration. Chloe, too, seemed to be grappling with her own insecurities. During our encounters, she was quieter than usual, and I often found her lost in thought. One night, at my loft, I couldn't ignore what was happening. "Chloe, are you all right?" I asked, her face distant. She sighed, running hands through her hair, confessing, "I'm just thinking too much about all this. About us, reactions, what it means for the future." I moved closer, taking her hand. "I'm thinking about it too, but our feelings matter most. We can face this together, can't we?" "Yes, but what if things change? What if we can't handle expectations?" Chloe replied, her vulnerability stark. "We can't foresee the future, but we decide how to navigate the present," I said, offering hope. "Let's take it one step at a time." Chloe nodded, but worry shadowed her face. The conversation unspooled. I sensed our critical point. We needed to solidify our bond, make this relationship stronger despite doubts. The following week, we decided it was time for an honest talk with friends. We met at the old Pecan Street Grill, a familiar downtown spot where good memories lingered. The place held an inviting glow, with soft lights and an unburdened atmosphere. The moment we settled, anticipation thickened. "So how are things?" Marcus Hayes asked, a smile, but his expression held keen curiosity. "Actually, we have things to discuss," Chloe began, sweeping her gaze around the table, "about our relationship." Silence fell, and I felt every eye on us. The tension was palpable, but we pressed on. "We are together, and we want you to know this is serious," I said, my voice firm. "But we understand it may be a surprise." Reactions varied. Some friends seemed excited, others cautious. "Seriously?" one asked, surprised. "That's amazing, congrats." Another, less enthusiastic, questioned, How do you handle this? What if things don't work out? Concern etched in his eyes. Chloe took a deep breath. I felt that question hit hard for us both. We hope it works, of course, but relationships are complex. Life isn't predictable. And we'll face it together no matter what, she answered, her determination admirable. The conversation deepened, and a raw honesty bloomed between them and their friends, slowly forging an unexpected sanctuary of support. As they voiced their latent insecurities and fears, Ethan discerned a quiet undercurrent of encouragement beneath initial concerns. True friendship, he knew, often demanded steadfast backing, even through daunting personal choices. Gradually, the palpable tension began to dissipate, and conversation flowed with a fragile ease. Laughter and familiar banter tentatively returned. As dinner concluded, a profound sense of relief settled upon Ethan. What had threatened to be a fraught exchange had blossomed into a moment of poignant connection and quiet understanding. As they prepared to depart, Marcus approached Ethan. "Ethan," he said, his voice low, "Chloe and I have your unwavering support. What you're embarking upon is courageous and truly admirable." His earnest words ignited a fragile spark of confidence. They departed the old Pecan Street Grill that evening, carrying a nascent sense of hope. The conversation had not only drawn them closer to their friends, but fundamentally fortified their burgeoning relationship. Chloe and Ethan anchored themselves more firmly in their choice, and the subtle pressure of lingering expectations commenced its slow, deliberate fade. The ensuing days unfolded with unfamiliar, gentle energy. They meticulously planned small, intimate gatherings and quiet excursions, savoring each fleeting shared moment. One evening, for a romantic dinner at Ethan's home, he eagerly offered to cook. As he carefully prepared a cherished dish, Chloe softly entered the kitchen, her eyes alight with intrigued curiosity. "May I help?" she inquired, the incandescent sparkle in her gaze utterly contagious. "Absolutely. You can be my co-conspirator," Ethan responded, a genuine laugh bubbling up. The evening transmuted into an impromptu ballet of shared laughter and unrestrained amusement. The kitchen enveloped in savory aromas as they cooked, their profound connection intertwining unequivocally into something irreversible. When the meal was ready, they settled at the table. Chloe met Ethan's gaze with a tender smile. "Ethan, this is utterly exquisite. You truly are a culinary artisan," she whispered. He found himself enveloped in a quiet, profound happiness. "Yet, it would not have been the same without your presence here," Ethan replied. As their glasses chimed in a subtle toast, a profound realization unfurled. This evolving relationship cultivated a transformative growth for the better deep within his being. In that moment, Ethan knew their journey, though imperfect, was one they were resolutely prepared to navigate together. The raw, beautiful vulnerability they now laid bare had become an unexpected fount of strength, and their burgeoning love offered an unshakable sanctuary amidst uncertainty. And so, as the relentless rhythm of life persistently revolved, Ethan sensed with nascent conviction that together they could transmute any encroaching storm into a fertile opportunity for profound growth. The future remained an intricate tapestry of the unknown, yet with Chloe steadfastly by his side, he felt for the first time genuinely eager to unravel what lay ahead. As the weeks unfolded, the bond between Chloe and me deepened. Our encounters brimmed with laughter, sincere conversations, and moments of shared understanding. There was a lightness to our connection that allowed me to shed the insecurities that had once tormented me. We inhabited a space where love and vulnerability intricately entwined, forging a strong and beautiful tie. Yet, life possesses a way of reminding us that not everything is flawless. On a sunlit morning, as we sipped coffee on my balcony, Chloe received a text message that instantly shifted the atmosphere. Her gaze grew serious, and I knew that something was amiss. "It's from my mother," she said, her voice trembling. "She wants to know when we'll meet again. You know how she is, always asking about my future. It's becoming difficult to keep hidden." I watched her, my heart tightening in my chest. "Do you want me to meet her?" I asked, my voice hesitant. The fear that this could complicate things hung over us like a heavy cloud. "I don't know," Chloe replied, uncertainty etched onto her face. "If I tell her I'm seeing someone, I might stir up a storm. My mother has very specific expectations for me, and I'm unsure how she'll react to knowing I'm with you." "We can wait a little longer if you prefer," I suggested, searching for the most gentle way to navigate the situation. "What truly matters is that we are together. There's no need to rush anything." She offered a small smile, but the underlying sadness lingered. "I just wish things could be simpler. I don't want my life to be defined by hiding who I am or who I love." The conversation grew heavy, and fear began to creep in once more. Not merely for the prospect of judgment, but for the looming possibility that we might be forced to choose between the love we had found and the formidable expectations that surrounded us. In the days that followed, Chloe remained distant. One afternoon, as we walked through a park, I noticed her quiet, lost in a labyrinth of thoughts. "Chloe, are you all right?" I asked, pausing to face her. "Sometimes I merely question if I am navigating the correct path," Chloe responded, her voice a muted whisper. "If this endeavor truly warrants the emotional cost, you understand. The burden of expectation is beginning to weigh heavily upon me. I know this journey is arduous, but reflect upon what we have painstakingly built thus far," I urged, attempting to offer solace. "Our affection is a tangible truth, and it deserves to unfold authentically. We cannot allow the specter of external judgment to impede our pursuit of genuine happiness." Chloe regarded me with an unsettling intensity, as if meticulously weighing the gravity of my words. "You speak with reason, yet concurrently I cannot dispel this pervasive heaviness. I feel as though I am disappointing my family by diverging from their prescribed aspirations for me. What if this ultimately severs our connection?" A pall of uncertainty settled over us, a pervasive shadow eclipsing the nascent light. "We cannot divine the contours of the future, Chloe," I murmured, intertwining my fingers with hers. "We must place our trust implicitly in one another. Love is a deliberate choice, and I choose you. Irrespective of what may unfold, we shall navigate this together." She offered a faint smile, and the subtle luminescence in her eyes brought a sliver of solace to my heart. "Thank you, Ethan. You invariably possess the right words to assuage my anxieties." The atmosphere between us began its delicate shift once more, and the ephemeral lightness we had known prior gradually returned. We both comprehended that we would inevitably encounter formidable challenges, yet we possessed each other as an anchor to confront them. Our love bound us, and united, we could discern a pathway through any tempest. We resolved that the time had arrived to adopt a more proactive stance concerning our lives. "Let us confide in our friends," I proposed. "Should they lend their support, perhaps we can face the family's reaction with greater fortitude." Chloe assented, and, during a casual gathering at the lively tap room, we decided to unveil our truth once more. The ambience was relaxed, punctuated by resonant laughter. When the opportune moment presented itself, Chloe and I exchanged a knowing glance. "Hey everyone," I began, my voice betraying a hint of unease. "We have something we wish to share with you all." The group fell silent, their gazes shifting, piqued with curiosity to rest upon us. "We are together now, immersed in a serious relationship. We wish for you to understand the profound significance of this to us." The response was immediate, and the nascent tension swiftly dissipated into a cascade of applause and exclamations of delight. "Finally!" a friend cheered. "I had my suspicions. You two are just too adorable together." And fortified by the unequivocal support of our friends, I felt the oppressive weight of expectation begin its slow recession. What might have been an emotionally fraught moment transformed into a genuine celebration, and I knew that, regardless of our family's eventual sentiments, we stood ready to confront whatever lay ahead. As the evening wore on, Chloe and I exchanged knowing smiles, brimming with relief and profound gratitude. The love we harbored was resilient enough to withstand adversity, and together we possessed the inherent power to confront challenges, one day at a time. Thus, emboldened by the unwavering strength of our bond, we felt prepared for whatever life might bestow upon us, confident that love would ultimately prevail.